Alright, so a while back, after I'd originally played through the terrifying Amnesia: The Dark Descent, I was really excited when I heard about SOMA coming out. It's been a minute since my first and only playthrough, so this spooky season, I decided to give it another go. First, I'm going to start by saying this game takes a distinctly different path than Amnesia. They share some core ideas, but they're very unique experiences. Both games are mysterious, and your confusing setting dictates a goal, which is to try to figure out your confusing situation. In both titles, you are a powerless entity. You'll need to run and hide to escape your foes rather than hacking and slashing. You don't have weapons or defensive capabilities. You just need to not get caught. That said, Amnesia feels more like a haunted house as you play it, and Soma's sci-fi story and setting paint it as something quite different. The game begins in a familiar real-world setting. It's a small bit of exposition that allows you to get familiar with the basic controls in a really natural way. You discover that your character's been experiencing some headaches, and you need to get down to a medical office for some treatment. As with the rest of the game, almost everything moves at your pace, so you have plenty of time to get acclimated and explore a bit. Immersion is really the goal from the very outset, which you'll discover very shortly after making it to this questionable doctor's appointment.
Simon Jarrett, right?
Dr. Munchie?
Well, it's just Mr. Munchie, but I'm working on it.
The storyline of Soma is an interesting one, though you don't have much choice in how it ultimately plays out. It presents some truly existential concepts to try to wrap your head around. I don't want to spoil the full story for anyone who hasn't played it yet, but you'll be forced to think about the meaning of life itself, what it is, and what it means to be sentient. We know who we are simply because that's what we remember. But what if that's not enough? As the story unfolds, you'll meet a limited cast of characters as well, and I have no complaints about the voice acting or the dialogue. Everything comes together really well. Despite being many other things, at the end of everything, the story being told and the perspective it's being experienced from is the true core of this game. One thing that actually seems really noteworthy to mention is the game engine itself. Despite a really limited set of items and interactable things in this world, the graphics and physics are solid. This feels capable for something even like an open world game. Sadly, you rarely need to do things in-game like open drawers or cabinets, but being able to interact with the world, even these unnecessary ways, helps bring you in deeper. Frictional Games did a great job with the level design overall, and atmospheric elements throughout the entire experience. There isn't a ton of need for platforming elements in this world, but the game is actually capable, and has a few. There's some physics interactions like the forceful breaking of glass as well, which feels like a nice touch. It's not overutilized either. The level designers correctly assume that less is more. There's sometimes a fine line between a concept and a gimmick, and a great balance seems to have been struck here. While there are a few portions that stand out in my memory as feeling a little bit samey, there are a number of setting changes in the title to keep things fresh, like an underwater exploration element. It's interesting to see that in an area without any walls or corridors, the most open world imaginable, the sea bottom, it's still possible to keep you from wandering off the path, with only minor hints at what direction to run toward. In terms of level design, it seems like a lot of effort and skill on display here. It certainly would have been easier to reuse level assets, keep a lot of the game within the same setting, and have the player bounce around within. But the devs decided to go the extra mile. You ultimately explore a bunch of different facilities and settings instead. While this choice put the level designers harder to work, it really seemed to pay off as you explore this specialized futuristic facility. Like many dystopian predictions from other stories out there, Soma plays out a future in which the human race ultimately failed. And you get a chance to learn and discover the steps that some survivors took in an effort to save humanity. By experimenting with intermingling the human soul and technology, a number of questions are brought up along the way, especially the classic sci-fi scenario when it comes to teleporters. Yeah, that person who just materialized looks the same as you and has all your memories, but they aren't you. You just got dissolved so that they can exist. Soma is much more an art and a form of storytelling than it is a game in most areas. Admittedly, the difficulty curve ramps up a little bit too quickly, and the sections of the game that introduce a fast enemy often result in a little frustration. The enemy AI is nothing close to the lifelike hunting you'd see in Alien Isolation. Once they know about you, they tend to come after you quickly, and there's not a ton you can do about it at that point. Looking away, or staring at a floor can work sometimes, but not always. The game isn't very punishing, however, if you die. Death is more of an annoyance or an inconvenience. Being injured and the weird graphic effects you have to deal with until you're healed, that's a punishment in its own regard. I will say that enemies feel relatively rare in SOMA overall throughout, and they're pretty limited in variety. They aren't meant to be a very central point of the game, which is surprisingly dissimilar to other games in the genre. I agree they needed to be included, but compared to how escape works in Amnesia, being able to barricade yourself and whatnot, this felt like a surprising departure. The enemy pathing and the AI isn't exactly broken, but it's nothing special here. Escaping enemies just isn't as fun as other similar titles. Many puzzles within the game world feel more organic than a traditional video game puzzle, if that makes sense. You aren't prompted with tutorial-type messages to guide you, especially with a lot of early decision-making. And it makes for a more satisfying experience overall. A lot of games make it a little bit too obvious what needs to be done, and that can take away from the gameplay. SOMA does a good job of letting the player figure things out. While it's true that limited overall options in the game itself make that discovery process a little easier, you're encouraged to pay attention to details around you. And not in an overbearing way, in my opinion. A companion you meet along the way, Catherine, helps reveal the story in bits and pieces. Having an imperfect narrator was a great move here. Catherine gives you just enough information to get by, making discoveries and big reveals still yours to initially discover. SOMA has some big plot twists, and sets your gears really turning fairly early in the game. As a character, you seem to integrate into these new dystopian surroundings pretty seamlessly. It actually feels a little bit odd how quickly your character begins to adapt to changes without a nervous breakdown, but it's important that it happens this way so that things can play out properly. Catherine's interactions with you help create an audible dialogue, which adds to the incredible soundscape at play here.
Have a look around the room. This is where they would keep the power suits, if there are any left.
While I recently applauded Alien Isolation on its masterful sound work, SOMA is similar, but quite different. Music is incredibly rare here, and instead you have the immersive sounds of these large facilities, your player's voice as he reacts to the world around him.
What the hell is this place? How did I get here?
Flashbacks occur in the form of sound clips as you interact with certain elements of the world as well. Directional sound is helpful to avoid the enemies you'll encounter, but on nowhere near the same scale as something like Alien. The result is a vibe that isn't as intense, but again, you aren't really meant to feel hunted in this game on the same level as others. While SOMA isn't the only game I've played through that has multiple endings, it's the only game I think I've played that has multiple endings in a single playthrough. I won't elaborate here on what that means as it pertains to really unlocking the confusing tale of SOMA, but the story's end is a truly bittersweet one, unique and fitting. The game overall is short, but it keeps you engaged, constantly immersed in a carefully crafted feeling. It's a page-turner in video game format. It appeals to your emotions and gives you some freedom to make decisions that might end up sticking with you, but not because they had anything to do with the game. Being able to pull off what they did here was quite a feat, and SOMA earned my respect. It's not a perfect game, but it's a memorable one. If you haven't tried it, it's also one of the not as spooky options in the genre, so you might be able to grab it on a sale or in a bundle. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my take on SOMA, and I appreciate your time here with me today. Thanks for watching.